Most people assume economies are built on work. Your job. My job. Millions of people waking up every morning, trading hours of their life for money. We're taught that labor creates value and debt is something to avoid. But what if that's backwards? What if for the past 300 years the global financial system has quietly been flipping that equation? It's making debt more valuable than your time, turning borrowed money into a more powerful force than human effort, and slowly building an invisible hierarchy where workers sit at the bottom and debt creators sit at the top. Today we uncover the quiet conspiracy that didn't need secrecy because it hid in plain sight. A system where those who create debt gain power and those who produce labor lose it. And the most shocking part? It wasn't an accident. To understand how debt became the most profitable product in human history, we need to go back before modern banks existed, before credit cards, before the Federal Reserve, to a world where value was measured in things you could touch: metal, livestock, harvests, land. For most of human civilization, labor was value. Kings needed farmers. Empires needed soldiers. Merchants needed sailors. Debt existed, but it was personal, emotional, dangerous. If you owed someone money in ancient Mesopotamia or Rome, if you didn't negotiate an interest rate, you risked losing your freedom. Debt was a burden. Labor was wealth. But that balance flipped slowly, subtly, because of three historical forces: the invention of fractional banking, the rise of sovereign bonds, the creation of central banks. These three inventions transformed debt from something to be repaid into something to be produced. Once debt became a commodity, everything changed. And labor, the thing humans had always relied on, started losing power. The conspiracy wasn't a meeting in a dark room. There was no single mastermind. It was a system evolving to maximize one thing: profit from credit creation. Once that door opened, governments, banks, and elites rushed through it. The turning point happens in 1694, the founding of the Bank of England. Before this, if a king needed money to fight a war, he raised taxes or took out loans from wealthy merchants. But wars became too expensive. Empires became too ambitious. So the English government tried something new. They borrowed money from private financiers, and in exchange granted them a royal charter to create a bank. This bank could do something revolutionary: issue banknotes backed by the government's promise to repay. For the first time in history, a major power discovered a formula: debt equals money plus power. More debt equals more money. Infinite debt equals infinite power. The labor of millions of English workers didn't fund the British Empire. Government bonds did. Suddenly, a person who produced goods earned pennies, while a person who held bonds earned interest. Debt produced income. Labor produced taxes. Debt became an asset. Labor became a liability. This model spread across Europe, then America, then the entire world. Every modern economy is built on this blueprint. Nations discovered they could grow faster by issuing debt than by increasing production. Factories required workers. Workers demanded wages. Wages cut into profits. But bonds, loans, credit expansions, those created money out of thin air. And the people who created the debt, bankers, central banks, governments, didn't have to work harder to earn more. Just sign documents and expand balance sheets. Debt began to compound faster than human productivity ever could. Here's the hidden math. A worker's productivity can grow maybe 1 to 3% per year, but a country's debt can grow 10 to 20% per year. And financial assets can grow even faster, minus 30%, 40%, sometimes 70% during booms. Labor simply couldn't compete. Then came the most important catalyst of all: the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913. For the first time, a central bank could set interest rates, control the money supply, enable unlimited leverage, bail out failing institutions, monetize government debt. From that moment on, the U.S. economy and soon the world entered a new era, the debt era. Credit replaced savings. Leverage replaced productivity. Speculation replaced work. And slowly, the conspiracy took shape. The system rewards those who borrow and punishes those who labor, not because of malicious intent, but because debt fuels the engine of modern finance, not human effort. The final blow came in 1971. President Nixon ended the gold standard. Money was no longer tied to anything physical. The last link between currency and human labor snapped. Money became pure abstraction. Value became a policy decision. Debt became the backbone of economic growth. Consider this shift. Before 1971, every dollar had some anchor in physical production. After 1971, every dollar had an anchor in debt. This flipped the incentives of the entire global system. Workers began losing ground. Real wages stagnated. Productivity gains went to owners. Not labor jobs moved offshore to cut costs. Education debt exploded. Housing debt skyrocketed. Medical debt became normal tax burdens, shifted from capital to workers meanwhile. Debt creators soared. Banks grew larger. Asset prices inflated. Wealth concentrated. Stock buybacks replaced wage growth. Corporate debt funded expansion. Government debt funded everything else. Debt became the fuel of politics, markets, and global power. Labor became the cost to be minimized. Today, debt doesn't just support the system. It is the system. Global debt is now over $315 trillion. That's triple the size of the entire global economy. Most nations owe more than they produce. Most corporations owe more than they earn. Most households owe more than they save. Debt is no longer a tool. It's the ecosystem we live in. Yes. And here's the dark twist. The more debt society holds, the more powerful those who issue it become. Because workers depend on loans, businesses depend on credit, governments depend on bonds, banks depend on interest markets, depend on liquidity. Debt isn't just valuable. Debt is essential. Labor still matters. We need workers, innovation, and creativity, but labor no longer determines power. Debt does. Over the decades, governments tried to fix inequality, stagnation, and the labor crisis. But every fix created more debt. Social programs gives funded by borrowing, corporate bailouts gives. Funded by borrowing, stimulus checks gives. Funded by borrowing, wars gives. Funded by borrowing, pandemic responses gives. Funded by borrowing, infrastructure plans gives. Funded by borrowing, even interest rate cuts meant to stimulate made borrowing easier and debt more attractive. The system is self-reinforcing. Every crisis creates more debt. Every solution requires more debt. Every new dollar is born from debt. We're living in a debt spiral with no mathematical escape. And governments know it. Central banks know it. Financial elites know it. But workers, the people whose lives are shaped by this invisible structure, are kept busy, working harder, earning less, competing against a machine that runs on leverage they can't access. To see the conspiracy clearly, look at today's world. Why do billionaires pay lower tax rates than workers? Because wealth now lives in debt-leveraged assets, not labor income. Why do asset prices rise faster than wages? Because debt inflates assets, not paychecks. Why do governments fear deflation more than debt crises? Because without constant borrowing, the entire system collapses. Why do workers need loans for education, housing, healthcare? Because the system requires them to. Debt keeps the economy growing even when productivity stalls. Why is Bitcoin rising? Because people are looking for an escape from a monetary system built on perpetual borrowing. Here's the modern paradox. If everyone stopped borrowing tomorrow, the world economy would crash. This is not a healthy system. It's a dependency. Debt has become oxygen, and the people who control its supply control everything else. 1. Debt became more valuable than labor through incentives, not accidents. Banking systems, governments, markets all discovered that credit creation grows faster than productivity, and they optimized for it. 2. Workers compete with a machine they can never beat. Labor grows slowly. Debt compounds exponentially. You can't outwork a balance sheet. 3. The next major shift will be about control. As economies move toward digital currencies, programmable money, and centralized systems, the power of debt creators will grow unless alternatives rise. The quiet conspiracy isn't a myth, it's a structure, a system where debt determines value, where credit creates power, and where human labor, once the foundation of civilization, has been quietly downgraded to a taxable input. The question isn't whether the system will change. The question is who will control the next version of money and whether workers will finally regain leverage or lose even more of it. If you want more deep dives into the hidden financial systems shaping our world, the ones politicians never explain and textbooks never admit, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. This story is only the beginning.